How to gain power and influence. That's a problem that many of the world leaders ask. Some of them might say good leadership, some might say building trust. But Mussolini and Hitler gave a very different answer. It was blood and soil and national rebirth. And all of them originate from the idea of a bundle. This is the origin of fascism, a bundle held together, unbreakable. And Mussolini transformed it into something greater. A country, militarized by myth, ruled by dictatorship, and corrupted from within. To really understand fascism, you have to understand crowd psychology. As mentioned at the beginning of the video, to sway a crowd doesn't require telling them what is true, but what they want to hear. Give them an idea that they could rally around, and something that excites people and binds them together. And Mussolini understands as well. Having a background in academia, he believes that the 20th century will be the century of collectivism and mass politics, or in simpler words, the group or community shall have priority over individual desire. Therefore, individuals have no inherent right independent of the state. Their value comes entirely from their contribution to this collective, national, or racial entity. Some people might recognize this, as Karl Marx has said similar things about how individuals have little worth when the will of the mass are taken into account. And this is true. Most people don't know that Mussolini and Hitler are also influenced by Karl Marx. However, they were different from Mao and Stalin, which is what historians call Marxist-Leninism, named after Vladimir Lenin. Hitler and Mussolini had adopted someone else's work, Georges Sorel. He was a French social thinker, political theorist, and historian, who theorized that in order to gain influence, the leader must create stories that people are inspired by, cherish, and held above criticism, or in other words, myths. A single binary story will be told, in which it describes the struggle between the rich and poor. The poor being the good side, while the rich being on the bad side. And since the poor is good, they deserve power. In the end, fear turns into loyalty and hatred turns into political power. A lie can be disproven. A myth is more dangerous because people do not only believe it with their mind, they believe it with their identity. It gives them a role in history. One of the not so well-known facts is that Mussolini was envisioning the rebirth of the Roman Empire. He promised the greatness of his nation, and turned nationalism into this mobilizing myth. The myth was so strong, in fact, that people should feel it in their blood. You should feel the spirit of your country inside you. Once people begin to feel their nation inside their blood, politics stop being only about law, debates, and policies. It becomes emotional and sacred. The country is no longer just a place on the map. It becomes an entity, and leader almost becomes like a religion. Mussolini did not present himself just as another old, boring politician. He presented himself as the man who could awaken Italy from weakness, restore its pride, and bring back the glorious ancient Rome. And every myth needs an enemy. Such a glorious nation wouldn't fall on its own. Someone had to be blamed. Weak politicians, socialists, liberals, foreigners, minorities, anyone who seems to stand against the national unity. Their violent action is justified as it helps bring the magnificent homeland back to its old glory. Censorship is no longer seen as oppression, as anyone speaking against the country is a traitor. Dictatorship is no longer seen as tyranny, as it was presented as national discipline. According to Mussolini, if you close your eyes and look deep inside you, you can feel your nation down in your bones. You can feel the spirit of your country inside you. A nation is not just territory, but something spiritual. He stirred up that idea of national identity, and people rally behind it. This is a myth that he created. Whatever it takes to bring back the greatness of the nation. They say whatever they need to say, and they do whatever they need to do in order to bring back about the greatness of the nation, at least in their mind. How can that be achieved, some might ask. Here's Mussolini's answer. It is also worth noting the economic system that they rely on. While they do not rely on capitalism nor communism single-handedly, they do use a hybrid approach. Private businesses are allowed if they serve the goal of the nation, and at the same time, there will be a bit of welfare flowing to citizens' hand. And mostly, the interest of the nation comes before everything else, so that the economy was designed to promote national strength, not individual wealth. Now that we have covered Italy, it is time to turn our attention to Germany. It is worth noting a bit of background. Before Hitler came into power, Germany was suffering from hyperinflation and was being economically and militarily constrained by the Treaty of Versailles. Hitler believed that the German people needed confidence in their ability to break out of these constraints and rise up again. He believed the only way to achieve this was through mass politics. Like Mussolini, Hitler was an eager nationalist. He was fascinated by Mussolini and vowed to be the same as him. This was all for the purpose of making Germany great again. To make the German people not have to live with hyperinflation, and bring on the new glorious Third Empire. He also framed his nationalism as something mythical, something you can feel deep inside yourself. The way Hitler put it was that nationalism isn't just a language, but rather it is something that lay in your blood. He thinks that the history was the struggle between race, and that the strongest race had the right to dominate the weaker one. Hitler believed that Germany needed a living space, especially in Eastern Germany. In his mind, expansion was not aggression. It was the natural right of the German people. This is the reason why war was glorified by Mussolini and Hitler, as there was no way of getting large swaths of lands peacefully. War was seen as a necessary component. In the eyes of the Nazis, war brought unity to the country. Peace was described as softness, weakness, or decay. As someone who wanted to restore the greatness of the empire, expansion was seen as necessary because a great nation, in his mind, could not remain passive. It had to prove itself through conquest. For Hitler, the idea is even more extreme. War was not only about national pride, it was about race, survival, and destiny. This is where German fascism becomes different from Italian fascism. Mussolini's myth focused on the rebirth of Rome and the glory of the Italian state. Hitler's myth focused on blood, race, and purification. This is one of the most dangerous parts of the Nazi ideology. It turned murder into purification, it turned hatred into duty, it turned racism into policy. There is a modification, which is that this myth does not include all of the German people. Not all living in the German border are shared the German blood. And of course, primarily by that, it targets the Jewish people. Hitler stereotyped Jewish people as a threat to the German society and believed that they were hurting Germany, which led him to declare Jews, despite living in Germany, does not share German blood. Since doing whatever it takes to make Germany great again was seen as a correct and justified action, it soon became clear that genocide would make the nation stronger. This brings us to the end of Hitler and Mussolini's journey of fascism. And we can hopefully have an idea about what is fascism. A myth that emotionally charges people, which is praised by one powerful leader, taken to the extreme even if that means heavy consequences. Now let's take a look at anyone else that might fit into this category. Many people think that fascism is on the rise again, but as always, the answer is somewhere between yes and no. Take a look at Erdogan, the president of Turkey, and he's calling for the rise of Turkey as a nation. He's an authoritarian right-wing populist leader, has consolidated executive power, weakened institutional check and balances, and have targeted individual media and political rivalries, and have called Benjamin Netanyahu publicly worse than Hitler. So is he a fascist leader? Most people say no, because he isn't extreme enough. He did not promote revolutionary ultra-nationalism or classic fascism, and he did not completely dissolve the constitution. Now let's turn our eyes into the Japanese PM Takarachi. She's a powerful ultra-nationalist lobby that advocates for patriotic education and a revisionist review of the Imperial Japan's history. She supported revising Japan's pacifist constitution, which renounced war and prohibits the maintenance of armed forces. Revising this clause will formally legitimize the self-defense force and grant Japan expanded political power and legal capabilities for defense and collective security. Basically, we are in Japan, and she regularly visits the controversial Yasukuni Shrine, which honors Japan's war dead, including convicted and Class A criminals. She's also generally not considered fascist, because she neither has complete totalitarian state control nor suspended civil liberties. This leaves us with the final candidate, US President Donald Trump. He freaking uses us versus them language, portraying political opponents as existential threats or enemy, and using the humanizing language to describe minority group or undocumented immigrants. He tried to overturn the 2020 election results with the January 6th Capitol riot, similar to a failed coup attempt in Germany by Nazi Party leader Adolf Hitler against Weimar's government in 1923. His government is also full of people loyal to him. This administration is responsible for many corrupted cases and scandals that are directly tied to him. It is up to you, the viewer, to decide whether Trump, Tegaracci, or Erdogan is a fascist or not. To me, Trump is the most debatable one, as he is the most extreme among all of them. His eyes is kind of a replica of Gestapo, but it's still debatable. And always remember, whatever you